Hi, my name is Dorian, and this is You, Me, and the Industry, a podcast where I get to hang out with people from the games industry and talk with them about their job, the industry, and a bunch of other stuff. This episode, I got to hang out with Xu Zetian, a cover and poster artist best known for her work for companies such as Sega, Mondo, Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. We talk about the difficulty of being a freelance artist, how to deal with burnout, what inspires her, and the importance of not being ashamed of your hobbies. Furthermore, we geek out over Yakuza, discuss Marvel movies, and I get to learn more about her current obsession, World Fairs. Please enjoy! Hello everyone and welcome to the show. Today I have the great pleasure to be talking to Xu Zetian, an illustrator and a cover artist. She did the incredible work for clients such as Disney's Marvel and Star Wars, DC Comics, Sega, Mondo and much more. She also does concept art for video game studios, is a lover of older movies, and she recently completed all the Yakuza games. So, welcome to the show.
Hi! Oh my gosh, it's so nice to be here. I love that introduction of me.
Yeah, I wanted to include the Yakuza games since on the podcast we talked a couple of times already on there, and I have also a very personal relationship nowadays to these games. I just like you, I think I recently sort of grinded through all 7 of them, and I feel broken. And to be honest, everything you read on the internet, they all have the wrong opinions. I think nothing infuriates me more than reading like threads about the Yakuza games and the rankings. And
Oh my God.
I'm just confused.
Okay, I'm so glad that you played also all of them because me too. Yeah, they are really, I was actually like considering bringing these games up, but I was also like, all right, I don't want to seem like too much of a crazy fan, but also I'll bring them up if you know what the Yakuza games are.
Right, yeah. Like before we go to the guest topic, I think this is very important. So what do you consider the best of the best? So what would you say is like the best Yakuza title you played?
Oh, this is a really hard question. I think they're all like great and imperfect, but like in a great way. I think Zero's story was the most. It made the
Right.
most sense. It just like tied everything together really nicely. Because I think some of the games, as much as I like them, I don't play them for the story as much. I play them
Yeah.
for the characters because some of the stories are just wild, just really
Right.
really out there. Like 4 and 5, I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I think with the third one, I almost wanted to turn it off because it was just
Oh,
it
did
was
you
horrible.
like Yakuza 3?
No, I think 3, 4, and 5 are almost not unbearable, but I think some of them are just like I guess I like some aspects of them, but sometimes there's just like this like political stuff going on, and I'm just like, why aren't we focusing on the mafia people? Like,
Oh,
why?
yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know what you mean because I personally love 3. I was like one of the minority
really,
like
okay,
of the Yakuza fans who did like 3 because I liked the whole orphanage subplot. But I also I get what you mean. It's kind of like all of these like the villains, like they always go all the way to the top.
right. What I really don't like is I mean, they couldn't have known that, but I think by now they should have just kept people around because they just introduced like this sort of like shadow group of people every new game, and they all
The CIA and the third one.
yeah, and they always pretend they're like, oh yes, those have been our enemies for 10,000 of years. I'm just like, I've never heard of them before, and then next game comes up, they're like, oh yes, this is this very famous subgroup of our clan, and they're like the big money makers, and we can't afford to lose them. Just like I never heard about them. Like what happened with them? Like
New, subsidiaries and new groups.
exactly.
Whole game. I think
Right.
by Yakuza 7 that they now because now have you played like the Judgment games?
No, I haven't played those. I was burned out after that.
A lot of the like just kind of like a lot of the shadow groups, as you say, and like those
Right.
they come back. And I think
Right.
nowadays they like realize, oh, we should probably have these people come back. And
Right.
yeah, but I mean, all of these games, I freaking love the Yakuza series. But it's like they're so like imperfect, you know?
Right.
They're not games where I'm like, this is a masterclass in writing or art or anything. I just think
Right.
they're wildly fun because they're so melodramatic and then just
Right.
really ridiculous and funny.
Right, yeah. I think they sort of blend this. Like, I think only Japan. I mean, I'm not trying to shame any other country, but I think, in my opinion, only Japan has been
Yes.
able to do this sort of mixture between like this real dramatic, serious stuff, and then the cutscene is over, and then you just go to like a dating romance simulation
Yeah.
of like one of your hostess girls or something, and just like it
Right,
works
dress-
perfectly.
You can dress up your cabaret girls. Like in
Right.
Yakuza 5, you just play part of the game as like Haruka, and then you're just like
Right.
sitting around and singing like an idol. It's just great.
Exactly. All right then. So yeah, what a perfect way to kick this off. And what we usually do here at the show is that we let the guest bring a topic to the show. And you told me before we kicked off this interview that you have a couple of them prepared. So let's just see how much we can go through them, or if we just focus on one, because they all sounded very interesting. So yeah, what kind of guest topic did you have prepared for us?
Okay. Well, I guess okay. I'll talk about my recent like new interests then, since
Sure.
I enjoy talking about them. Yeah, I like, I've recently been thinking about how it's like we were talking about, what's considered nerdy nowadays, right?
Right.
Like how, because often I see a lot of people online, they talk about how they're kind of ashamed to, like this really niche interest, or they're embarrassed about this interest of theirs or their hobby of theirs. And I disagree. I
Right.
think that the more you go into things that you like, it just makes you a more well-rounded and interesting person.
Right.
Recently I got really into the topic of world's fairs and world's exhibitions. And it also talked about how we were both at like the Shanghai World Fair.
Right.
Back-
Yeah.
Was it like 2012 or something? 2011?
I think 29. I think, right? 2009.
Oh, it might have been. Yeah, it might have been 2009.
I think so.
Yeah, but I got really into kind of just the history of all of these countries sending their people to go like exhibit their newest technologies and that kind of
Right.
stuff at this one place.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've been doing a lot of reading about it. I got there was in 1851 there was like the first world's exhibition called the Great Exhibition, and it was in London, but they had built this huge crystal palace to house, it was like 14,000 different, like I think 14,000, there were 14,000 different exhibitions in this palace, and there were all these different countries that brought along their like kind of inventions and culture and that kind of stuff to this one place. And I think something about that is really fascinating. Just like something about just like bringing a certain part of your nation's like treasure or industry,
Right.
and to share it with this like other, like this whole conglomerate of people. And I think the history of these kinds of things are really fascinating because it wasn't all roses. I think in a lot of these past exhibitions there were like human zoos and that kind of thing, which
Oh, really?
yeah, it was really like there was a really dark side to it as well.
Oh, wow.
But just like learning about like how they used to, it was like during a time when travel wasn't as accessible, to the rest of the world.
Right.
So something about it just really fascinated me. So I find myself reading a lot about it these days and kind of just like taking notes. And I don't know what's going to come out of it. I think maybe I'll do like an original story of some sort. But that's just farther down the line.
Yeah. Right. I think it would also be like, since your work is also very often related to poster artwork. I think there's this like sort of, what is it called? Like I think there's this sort of like culture, like poster culture behind like great parks in the United States, and they all have like those great artworks and great posters. And I think it would also be interesting to have like sort of a poster set that goes along with like all these like exhibitions of like having the different pavilion of like a print or something just representing, because I can already imagine it with like different art styles maybe from like the nation would be also very interesting to have like this represented.
Yeah, actually I was thinking of something. I was thinking something very similar, because I was thinking of like what sort of project I'd like to make out of this. I like maybe an art book or a zine of some sort where maybe it would be like a whole bunch of different artists, and each artist would create their own, fictional city or fictional country. And we'd all make a poster out of it, or just like kind of imagine what this place would look like. And, how would it could be a travel poster of sorts, where you're trying to kind of like appeal to people, like why they would want to visit your country or your city or, your fictional planet or whatever. So yeah, I was thinking of a similar project of that as well, because part of this was I was looking at a lot of the actual posters for various World's Fairs over the years. They were really, really beautiful. Oh, wow. Especially like the ones for like there were worlds in like 1939, 1964, like the ones in Chicago and New York. All these illustrated posters were really, really beautiful, and they were just exactly right up my alley. So I've just been collecting a lot of them, putting them on mood boards and that kind of stuff. So that's awesome, yeah.
I think it also sort of ties back to video games in general, since this podcast is mostly focusing on video games. It's I think this was also the pitch Ken Levine made for the BioShock Infinite game, that they sort of had this like floating city that it was sort of like going around the country, or like going around, I think maybe even like cities and maybe even countries, to sort of show like the prosperity of like America and how far they have come with this flying city. I think it sort of goes back into this round of like the exhibitions that you just mentioned.
Yeah, actually, that's funny you mentioned that. I loved BioShock Infinite. I mean, that game 10 years ago now. I can't believe it's been so long, but I love that game. And I was also thinking of it when I was learning about these things. I was like, a part of my brain did jump to BioShock Infinite, because I was like, oh yeah, this reminds me of like it's very much kind of like the, I don't know if I should use the word aesthetic, but it's very much like, what BioShock Infinite did, was that it's, about this quote unquote great city, but there's kind of this dark underbelly of it, but it's also like kind of, steampunk, it's up in the air, and, there's a lot of, but there's also just like a lot of bad things going on with it. And it kind of also takes place during that time period as well. So,
Yeah, very interesting, because I never thought about these. I only remember one was in Germany when I was still very young. I think it was like, I guess 98 or something, or 99, not quite sure anymore. I think I remember back in the day they were talking about an exhibition, and then I only went to the Shanghai one, and I guess they kind of stopped due to COVID, I guess, right these days. I'm not even sure what the schedule is like of these. Are they like every 5 years, or like how, like, do you know the schedule of these exhibitions?
Years, but I don't think there's been one as of late, unless I'm wrong.
Right.
I should know this, but I actually don't.
Yeah. Well, you aren't as nerdy as you thought, I guess. Yeah, but I guess just like coming back to your topic, I guess I sort of agree with you that I think this also goes back to myself personally, because I think back in the day I was sort of trying to, I guess, fit in more with people and sort of just like reduce my, let's just say, craziness or weirdness or nerdiness to just like a normal level, and it kind of made me bland and boring and uninteresting. So I guess I would just encourage everyone who listens, just like be yourself, and I guess if you're into nerdy things, I think it makes you more interesting. And I guess also this revolves back to the topic, or like bring a topic to the show. I always love to hear people talk about stuff they really care about, if it's just like, I don't know, the great boats of the 1930s or something, just like, I love to hear these, because it makes, like you said, it makes people so interesting, because they are talking about it with passion and with so much knowledge. And I guess I always appreciate when somebody sees the beauty in something I find quite mundane or never thought about, like, let's just say, ships. And if a person would come into the show and talk like, just look at the architecture and like the aerodynamics or something, and I would be like, you know what, that's right, that sounds great. I actually, maybe the next time I see a boat, of some rich dude over there or something, I would think about it differently.
Oh my God, no, I feel the exact same way. Oh my gosh, I love people especially when they're like super passionate about like trains,
Right.
or ships, like you say, or just
Right.
planes, and then they're like, I saw there was this one TikToker who had like, I don't know, his name is Francis like Borgios or something, Bourgeois, but he like is an English TikToker who went viral because all he talks about are trains, and he goes train spotting. And then he talks about like how much he loves them, and but no, he's like a huge success now because people just find that sort of passion really, really endearing,
Right.
you know. And so yeah, I mean, now I like trains too. I think their compartments are really cool.
Right.
Yeah, speed, really nice. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, like I said, it's always cool to hear people talk about something they really care about. And so, like I said before, embrace your nerdiness. And I think I guess, like, what topic really would be off limits nowadays? I guess it should be legal, but I mean, besides that, I think anything is cool, just like, I don't know, if you like to talk about the great cushion designs of the 1800s, it's fine with me. So I recently went to like a big castle big castle, and I was just like it's so funny because there was his throne room or something was filled with like these artworks or something, and I'm just like, and they kind of reminded me of like anime or something, because I think like back in the day this was sort of like his comic book or like his anime equivalent, just like showing off like look at this great painting. I'm just like, it's just like, to be honest, it's just like, it's kind of corny, like a dude like standing next to a tiger or something killing a dragon, and I'm just like I think back in the day they would call him nerdy as well, but he was the king, so nobody could say anything. But just embrace it. And he had like his whole room like cluttered with all these like great paintings of, I guess, likely himself killing dragons or something. And he was the king. So
that's really cool, though. I mean, if if I was a king back in what was it? Was it like the 1500s or something?
Right.
I would commission artworks of that.
Yeah. I mean, this dude went so far, he had his own cave. Like, there was one room who was just designed like a cave inside his castle. It was just like, you just opened the door and there was just a cave. Just like a cave.
Oh, what's this? Is this in German?
Yeah. In German, it's called Neuschwanstein, I think, and it's and I think it's quite famous. I'm quite sure. I will look it up later and I will tell you the name. But yeah, it's beautiful. It looks like one of those Disney castles, like really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
But like, if you look inside, you're just like, this is just a nerd.
This is just a nerd, but nobody could make fun of him.
Right, exactly. So
get beheaded.
Right, exactly. So if you think you're too nerdy, the king is also nerdy. So you're just as royal as the king.
Right. There's this kind of like, I feel this way a lot, especially because I got into old movies back in college, and there was this period of time where I would tell people I liked old movies, and then especially with older people, they would find that super cute, or they would find that like really funny. And at first I was like super embarrassed because I was like, oh, like, am I not supposed to be into this kind of stuff?
Right.
Because people like found it funny that I was, but the more that I got into them, the more that I was just like, you know what? No, like I like my sophisticated taste, you know?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter, if people laugh at you or whatever.
Right.
You can be into a lot of different things.
Totally. Everything is valid these days, so just embrace it. And so let's just I guess some of the other topics you had, I think we'll likely cross them at some point, like Yakuza, and before the show we also talked about Marvel and DC, and how they sort of are equivalent to a trainer, are like what are they called, like not a Ferris wheel, a roller coaster ride. I think Scorsese put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think you wanted to also, we had to cut the discussion a little bit short because we wanted to get the interview going. But how do you agree with Scorsese when he talks about Marvel and DC comic book movies?
Well, okay, so first of all, I will just say, I find them really fun. Like, I've watched DC movies, I've watched a bunch of Marvel movies. I mean, I always come out of the theater having had a good time.
Yeah.
I also, it's not that I agree with Scorsese. I see his point, because I also think that Marvel and DC movies, I would argue that they are art,
Right.
and they are, films. I do think like, but I totally see the guy's point. They're kind of nowadays, especially because Marvel and DC, they're just these two, huge conglomerates. It's very capitalistic,
Right.
some of these movies. And I see kind of where he's coming from
Right. They're
from that standpoint.
they're pumping them out also very fast.
Right, they're pumping them out. They all kind of follow a formula
Right.
in both like aesthetics and design wise and
Yeah.
story wise stuff. They're very catered to the masses. They're very catered to the specific audience,
Right.
which is I guess most people on this planet. And I mean I respect it because it's just like a lot of people like it for good reason, but I also I wish that there were more movies made of original stories.
Right.
I really like what A24
Oh, yeah.
that company has been doing. I wish that there were more, instead of filmmakers, like I really wish there were just more eyes on indie filmmakers or filmmakers who were
Right.
doing their own stories,
Right.
instead of everything being this like this huge what do they call it? It's just everything being this made from this huge like corporation.
Right. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it also feels like sometimes, like for example, I'm also a big Marvel fan in general, but I think also some of the movies who could have their own identity a little bit more shown. I think the newest like Shang-Chi movie was fine, and I liked it because I guess I'm also part Asian, so I like to see like Asian superheroes also as well. But I think there's also some sort of like they have to follow a certain routine and a certain look. And I think they tried to
Right.
embrace it with like the culture, but in
Yeah.
the end they sort of had like, well, we have to do this now. Like this is what we do always. And I'm just like, I get it. Doctor Strange, he is like a magic user. He travels between
Yeah.
dimensions. I haven't seen a new Spider-Man movie, but I guess he will travel through dimensions, and he is crazy and he needs all the magic. Like, I mean, you basically have just like a Jackie Chan hero, and he doesn't need to fight like a dragon or fly through the air. Like, you can just have a nice fight. Like, have it more emotional. Like, do something like Tiger and Dragon, for example. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm just like feel a bit
It's-
shamed.
I know what you mean. I feel like many with superhero movies, they're very safe
Right.
in that aspect.
Exactly.
They're kind of afraid to really go out and push the boundaries of filmmaking or whatever.
Right.
And they kind of all follow this formula that's been tried and tested
Right.
by Marvel and DC, and I get why it's very successful. But I think that's what like Scorsese meant.
Right.
When he kind of equated them to being on a roller coaster or a theme park.
Exactly.
It's like you're there to have like a fun but like ultimately save time.
Exactly, yeah. You also feel I think you lose the unique touch of the director. So for example, if you ask me sometimes, like, what was the Russo brothers, who are like world famous now, but I mean, besides that, I'm just like, yeah, I guess there was, this one and maybe this one, but I don't really see like a certain touch. There's like there's Scorsese movies, there are Tarantino movies, and they all feel like they have like this director's touch, or Edgar Wright, for example. You feel that they are like that. But for the Marvel movies, I'm just like, what's the difference between like the director of Doctor Strange and Thor, for example, which are fine, like they're fine.
Exactly.
But I mean, I couldn't tell you.
It's because I think I had mentioned this before. It's like I go into a Marvel movie and it's all just like so many different colors,
Right.
and it's just like so many funny colors. There's a lot of explosions
Right.
and fights, and I always come out of Marvel movies with a giant headache. and which is why I don't see a lot of superhero movies. Like I can only go once in a while.
Yes.
But I do agree. It's they kind of you kind of lose the individual vision
Right.
of the directors at most points,
Which is their goal, right? I mean, this is why they created the MCU. Like, this is the same universe, so it should feel the same,
Exactly.
I guess. But I guess you lose something because of that. There's something you gain through like the interconnected movies. You have crossover events. You have like these like events that have impact on other shows or other movies. But then you also lose this sort of artistic freedom, and somebody like Edgar Wright famously left Ant-Man because he didn't feel he was able to have like his own creative touches for the movie.
And I guess this is something that is difficult to handle. I mean, they are the biggest successes in the world right now, so I mean they're doing something right. But I guess there's also a bit of like a sort of a culture between like the insecurity that sometimes goes along with that, because nowadays every time a director mentions something like Scorsese, for example, they all dogpile on him like, how dare like this old grandpa directing, just like he's only the director of like, yeah, exactly.
Didn't do as well. Yeah. No, I mean, I still respect Scorsese because he like, he's a director who really appreciates, original stories, and especially stories that like come from around the world.
Right.
Like, I think he has his like, I don't know what he did. It was like he made something that was geared towards, people finding, movies around the world, and just like a lot of movies from different cultures and directors that many in the West haven't heard of. Yeah, I mean, I really respect the guy. Like, I get why people would be angry if he doesn't refer to these films as art. I think they're still art, but I do agree with him in that the effect they have on audiences is kind of, it's more akin to going to a theme park and enjoying yourself and not thinking too much about it.
I'm not really thinking about like the intricacy of the design experience of the roller coaster ride, but I think it's for a movie. So I think it's fine, and I guess the guy made some of the best movies ever. So I mean, he's, I guess, entitled to his opinion. So
bad mouth.
Exactly. So let him be, and I think it's all fine. And so let's just move over to your expertise, which is art. And I wanted in general to ask, like, let's just say for video games. So like you also do concept art while also doing posters for other stuff. So and I would likely understand this, but let's just start with general. So like, what is the purpose of concept art in video games?
Right, concept art is just that, like, it is art that like, it's ideation, right? You're visualizing, what a character would look like, what a world would look like, certain aspects of the design or how the environment would look like to a certain thing. With most concept art, it's quite rough. And I think that's like something that a lot of people, me included, when they first get into it or when they say they want to get into concept art, they don't realize that oftentimes like the finished pieces of like the fantasy worlds and like sci-fi worlds that they're looking at, it's very polished.
Right.
And it's usually art that's made to be published after a game or movie comes out for the art book or for the general public or whatever. But yeah, I mean, most concept art is quite rough because this is just like, you're just beginning to think about what this character or creature or environment would look like, right? That was something that I had to kind of learn really quickly when I first tried to get into the industry. Like, I don't do a lot of concept art nowadays because I had tried it a bit in college, and afterwards I am currently also like working as like a concept artist and background designer for an indie game, but that's about it. Like, I've also done some concept art and matte paintings for like advertisement studios, but I learned really quickly while kind of trying these that it wasn't something that I was super interested in, because what I really wanted to do was I wanted to make kind of like the finished looking products for games or movies or that kind of stuff. And so concept art isn't that. It's not the finished product. It's just what you're doing behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's actually how I found posters, which is it's more like advertisement, right? You're kind of giving a finished product to advertise for a certain like a certain film or game or whatever movie, and so that's what really drew me into the world of posters, which is because there was like a certain aspect, like I could really refine the piece and I could do a lot of things to the piece to show like the glamour of the finished thing. And so that appealed to me a lot more than being a concept artist, which is why ultimately I am here.
Yeah, right. I think also concept art is kind of tricky because it has to be polished enough to give the people an sort of indication of like what the overall feeling of like a situation or like a moment was, and also it has to be rough enough to be turned out a little bit more quickly. Than you can't have like stay there because everybody else has to wait for you, since the concept art is sort of the reference material.
Yeah, like concept art pipelines can be really, really fast. And so you got to work fast. You got to be able to deliver like quality work. And it also has to be like, I know it's a bit different from games versus film. Like I know the stuff you have to design has to be possible for the 3D artists, for example, to be able to make or like rig up. And so, there's a lot of things that you have to, think about, and you have to be able to conceptualize, like visualize really quickly. And so for an artist like me, and it's like, I can work quickly, but I would prefer not to. I would prefer to spend my time like painting a lot of things. So for me, I quickly learned that, okay, maybe this is not, like, I still like the craft of concept art, but it's maybe not something I would like to do, for a studio, or work full time at something.
Yeah, I think it's also like maybe you agree with that. I think it's a difficult area in video games because it's not as apparent in the final product. I mean, nobody really knows like, was there good concept art in the end, or was there bad concept art? I think if you open up the art book, you say like, oh wow, this was like the concept art for this, like, I don't know, big chase scene in Uncharted or something. But you don't really know until you bought the art book. So like, do you think it's like very difficult for I guess gamers or just like moviegoers to appreciate something if they don't really think about it? Like, did you really can you really tell from a product that they had like great concept art in the end? I think it's very difficult.
Yeah, I think it can be difficult, right? Like, I think that was also the reason why ultimately it didn't appeal to me as much, which is like, maybe this is just my ego speaking, but like, I kind of want a bit of that recognition. If I make something for something, for like a game or movie or whatnot, like I want the people to be able to see the finished product. And so with concept art, I know a lot of film and game fans, they do really appreciate it, but it is also something that you have to look for, like what you said, in an art book, or you have to go find the artist online, or something like that. With posters, it's like you also do have to look for it, but I think it's just more visible because it's a form of art that can be posted anywhere, that is posted in like on billboards and on theater posters and that kind of stuff. So there's an aspect of it that's more visible to people, which I kind of like personally. Yeah.
And also just in the nature of it, because, well, let's just say, because some people would say, like, I mean, if you just see like a piece of concept art and somebody would say, well, this looks kind of rough, like this looks very rough. And you're like, well, it is rough because it's the concept art. But then people on Instagram won't know, because they say like, oh, I only watched the picture and I will just swipe left or just like scroll down or something. But like it is supposed to look rough because it is rough, but then it sort of lacks also the appeal of being looked at compared to like a final product. Which is kind of crazy because like, this was also something I wanted to ask. Like I think in general the question is, when is something done? It's very interesting to me because you could hone on it or like work on it for decades if you could have like unlimited time. But especially for like concept art, like how do you know like this isn't too rough or too bad and this is now not too polished for something like concept art? I think it's very difficult to sort of jump off.
For that kind of art, it's done when the deadline's up, because there are just deadline restrictions, and it's also, I guess it's done when the art director says, okay, we need to get this done. It looks good enough to me. And so with that kind of, and like I also think a lot of the concept art that you see online, that artists post, are stuff that they've kind of like fixed up or rendered a bit more after they're done. But it's a much different sort of, I mean, all art I think is the same, when you boil it down to the basics, but it's much different. It's a much different way of working than, being a fine artist where or like being, I don't know, like a painter working in the 15th century where you're spending years on like painting like one thing for like a client or like a church or something.
Yeah, I guess it's just difficult to sort of also sometimes those things are under NDA. For example, I guess some of the concept art might be even included in like another game's moment. So let's just say, look, there's like a very key moment in Uncharted or something where, I don't know, the two brothers meet or they have like a sort of chase scene or something, and then they say like, well, can I publish it now? They're like, no. We might need this for the sequel because this looks like a very good gameplay moment, so we can't publish it. And then you're just like, well, now I'm screwed. Like, wow.
And oftentimes they gotta, like, concept artists, you gotta put stuff, it's under NDA for years and years. And so like, because I also have stuff that's been under NDA for a while. And like, I think this is, I mean, it's very common for anyone in the art industry, but it's like you run into that issue where after a few years, your art has gotten better and it's like changed enough so that you don't really care about showing the old stuff under NDA anymore. But then like that stuff comes out and you're like, well, okay, I can show it now, but also my art's kind of gotten better. Like, you kind of already moved on from it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I run into that problem a whole lot where, especially with the game I'm, doing freelance work for, I'm just like, oh man, it's going to be like, a few years when when it finally comes out that I can probably release it.
And then also, I mean, you will also be likely better by then. So they will release like this old art or you're like, wow, I can finally show it, but I'm kind of not embarrassed or ashamed, but you're like, well, yes, but I can also do better stuff now. I guess, yeah.
It's also like, I feel like my stuff has changed over the years.
Exactly.
Everybody's always constantly evolving and changing as artists. And so, there's also the issue where, after you release the old stuff, maybe some clients or potential clients will come to you and they're like, oh, we really like what you did with, this project. Can we hire you to do something with this? And by then your stuff will have changed enough so that you're kind of like, can we do what I'm doing right now? Like, I know you like my old stuff, but I don't want to work in that way anymore. Yeah. So it's, I don't know, it can get kind of tricky.
Yeah. And speaking of art books, I know that you have a copy of The Art of Dishonor 2 in your possession. And
I do. It's like by my side right now.
Right, exactly. Alongside a couple of other books like Spectrum 26 and some other stuff. So like how do you determine what makes it into your sort of like go-to or like nearby to grab art book inspiration? Like, is there like a real strict guideline that like, it can only have been like one game book and like maybe something from this area, or is it, because I think you're also very tidy with your desk space, so what are the rules there?
I love being organized. Well, okay, I will say Spectrum 26 is here because I was in Spectrum 26, and so it was the first Spectrum I like applied to and got in. I think, yes, the first Spectrum that I applied to, because I finally felt comfortable with my stuff at that point where I was like, all right, I'm going to try out for this. And because it's, a line of books that I've always, looked at and regarded very highly. And when I did make it in that year, I was like, oh my God, I've made it, or not really, but it was like a nice little achievement. And so that's why that's on my desk. With the other books on my desk, I have a few books from like classic Golden Age illustrators that I really, really love. I'm really inspired by, old, Golden Age illustrations, advertising illustrations from the 1950s. I love that kind of stuff. And so I have a few art books from
like L. Parker,
just like illustration era. Oh, sorry. What did you say?
Yeah, like L. Parker or like J.C. Landecker or something.
Yeah. Lion Decker, Al Parker, Austin Briggs. Those illustrators I love. So Dishonored 2, The Art of Dishonored 2 is like the only game art book I have. I think that game in particular is to me, it's the game that influences me the most artistically.
Oh, really? Okay.
Everything Arcane Studio does, I think they have a really nice grasp of art direction, and I love all of the concept artists and just illustrators working with them. Dishonored 2, I loved the environment designs and kind of like the background designs. There's like a very specific, how do I say it? Like, it's very complex, just I feel like the world building in it is really special, and just they put a lot of craft and thought into it. And so I got that book and I have not regretted it since.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are no rules for you, like, or do you say like, okay, I can't buy any more right now because there's like, it's too tidy right now, I can't include many more books?
Yeah, I actually, I think right now my desk is too small. I think like when I finally move, I will probably have to get a bigger desk.
Right.
Because even right now, all the art books are kind of packed really tightly, and there's not that much space on here,
Right.
even though I try to organize everything really well. But yeah, I try to limit the number of art books that I have, because I know that, with too many art books, it's just like too hard to choose.
Right.
Like what you want to be inspired by on a particular day. So yeah, I do try to limit the amount on my desk.
Right. And when you're working on with video games and something, and you did also some as a poster for Sega on the Sonic anniversary. So I think for the process of movie posters, you, I think on a different podcast said that you usually check out the movie, or look at a very striking pose in the movie, and then you reference that. But how do you condense something from a video game? Because sometimes even games don't have many cutscenes, for example, like Sonic, for example. How do you condense something onto a character? How would you condense Sonic, for example, what you did for the movie, for the anniversary?
Right. The Sonic thing was a bit different because I am not the biggest Sonic fan out there.
Yeah.
I love a lot of Sega stuff. The one Sonic game that I remember being so obsessed with as a kid, and the only Sonic game that ever did this to me, was Sonic Heroes, which I actually heard it wasn't even that popular of a game, or I've heard it's not regarded as the best Sonic game of all time.
Right.
But I remember I really liked it when I was a kid. So More Art Gallery had reached out to my agency, and they were kind of like, hey, do you want to do, work with us on a Sonic release? It's going to be, Sega approved. And I think they even it was the character designer for Amy. They got him to, because he approved, I think he approved our pieces for the release for the anniversary event.
Right.
And so they were like, hey, do you want to do this? It's for Sega. And I was like, okay, well, awesome. And I was kind of thinking of the only Sonic game that I really like is Sonic Heroes. So I was thinking of my favorite level in Sonic Heroes, which I had a few, but my favorite one was one that took place. It was a place called Casino Park, and it was just themed. It was a bunch of dice and a bunch of what was it, huge roulette tables and pin machines, and I've always thought that was very it was very I really liked the level design when I was really young. I thought, the music and everything was just super fun and really different from the rest of the game. And so that was kind of what I wanted to do. And so I, sent them a sketch, and they were like, yeah, you can do that. And so that's kind of the background and what I chose to illustrate for it. I think they, Sega had gotten back to me, and I had to change the pose.
Okay.
Sonic and Tails for a few times, because at first they weren't large enough, and then they had to be I had to put Sonic, make sure Sonic was in the front and center of things, and I had to change up the characters a few times to make sure they were all doing an iconic strike or pose. And they were also very particular about what like the color palettes that we were using for them. They were like, oh, you have to follow like the exact blue that Sonic is, and like the exact, you have to follow the exact number of colors. And you have to make sure that, like I don't think I was drawing Knuckles' shoes right, and so they're like, oh, you have to change. It was really specific details I had to write.
Yeah.
But I think I honestly like loved working on that piece. It was something like I've always wanted to do something for Sega. And so being able to do something that was like licensed for them, that was one of my highlights for 2021.
Yeah. And do you, like you said, for the movies, you tend to rewatch the movie. So do you replay the game, or do you watch some reference YouTube video or something?
Right. I don't have a PS2 anymore. So what I did was, like, usually with movie posters, I watch the movie, or I will like replay the game if I'm doing something for a game. I don't have a PS2 anymore, so I just went on YouTube and I looked at a bunch of playthroughs of Sonic Heroes for that one.
Yeah, I guess it's also difficult to sort of condense it to like a specific moment. I mean, if you have the freedom like that, but I guess for movies there are like some key moments, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I could do this. Or I think you did also a Blade Runner piece for the Blade Runner 2049 when Kay was talking to the Joy giant hologram. So like those are like very striking moments. But I think with like games that are only based on gameplay, it might be a little bit difficult to like say like, oh, I guess I could do a pose for this, or like a moment of this. I guess, do you feel like the sort of since you are like, you have more freedom and you have like, it's very difficult to pinpoint this exact moment, do you sometimes feel it's a little bit difficult for working on that?
I actually don't, because I think I usually think of games similar to movies when I work on art. Like, there's the characters that I want to illustrate. I go by my own feelings on things a lot. Because with the Sonic one, I was kind of like, all right, I think it might be more recognizable environment wise if I illustrated Green Hill Zone, or something else that's far more recognizable to Sonic fans and also just the general public. Right. But I really wanted to do the casino level. And I was like, all right, I don't care if people don't recognize this. I want to do this. Okay. But yeah, with a lot of these things, you do have to think about like marketability and how well something will sell. I'm gonna admit, with the Sonic piece, I was like, I think this will sell better if I do the Green Hill Zone that you always see him in, but I am going to be self-indulgent and do the casino level because I want to, and because it's something different. So why not try it, Yeah. But yeah, like I recently finished I do some private commissions as well. And so I recently I'm doing like a series of Ghost of Tsushima prints for it, nothing official, but it's just a series of private commissions. And so the one I just finished is going to be of Jin, and it's going to be like a portrait of him, but there's also like a fighting scene at the bottom. I try to think of moments that are recognizable to people. So something that's like not totally out there. But because you have to think about like, well, would someone want this on their wall? Would someone be inclined to buy this? Would it look good on someone's wall? It's different when you're like, if you're working on a piece, like an original piece for your own pleasure or your own self-interest, then that's different, because then you can be like, well, okay, I want this to happen, so I'm gonna draw this, because there's no wrong way to draw something, I think. But when you are working for another project or another IP, you have to think about the audience and especially what the client wants.
Sure, yeah. And speaking of what the client wants, I think I once heard, it might be in Mad Men or it might be on Twitter or something. I once heard that artists love to give clients something that they don't know they wanted, instead of exactly giving them what they asked for. So, like, do you think there is some truth to it, or do you feel like, I guess the artist, I guess the client always knows best in the end, or are you sometimes really just like grinding your teeth? You're just like, I think this is really the better choice, but don't be so stubborn.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I have never heard of that quote, but I totally agree with it. I think when those kinds of projects happen, because I have had those projects happen where you're working with a client and they want something, but then you suggest something else or something that's sort of related to it, but you're kind of like, oh, well, I think it would be really cool if this happened. And then they immediately agree. And then they're like, oh my God, I love it. Or yeah, this looks great. I love it when that happens because it just means like you and the client click really well. And they see you for your own vision, not only what they want, So I've had those experiences. I love it when those types of things happen. I've also had many experiences where the client just asks for something entirely different, or they're completely like, they don't want to bend to the artist's own vision. And so those are times when I do tend to clash with them a bit more. Just because I'm kind of like, well, you are hiring me for my own take on things. I do think the client ultimately, like as a freelance illustrator, I do think I need to listen to them ultimately, which is why I will do what they ask. I mean, sometimes I'll try to do a little pushback or be like, hey, I really think this is the right way because yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
But ultimately, I'm also like, you know what, they are paying me to, create their vision. So I have to respect that at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very fine line because you don't want to fight with the client too much. Like sometimes, they ask for something completely ridiculous and then you're going to have to push back on them. But yeah, I'm kind of one of those people where I like to be a bit easier to work with, like I will suggest things, but if they don't like it, at the end of the day, it is my job. I am getting paid for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I would like to have a question related to the question of talking about money for a second. I think there was a big Twitter thread you posted a while ago about the money you get or like the average money you earn per commission or something. And you said like there's a range between like, I don't know, like back in the day you started with like $300 and then you moved up for like a couple of $1,000 for a commission or an illustration. So like, but I think it's very difficult for like an artist to gain the confidence in asking a certain price because like, well, it's basically you who determines what you're worth. I guess a lot of younger artists who are just starting out are sort of struggling with that. So like, how does a person gain the confidence of asking like, well, I guess an hour of my time is worth $60 and not 10 or not $5 or like $100. Like, how do you really like gain the confidence for doing that?
Right. This is a complicated question because I often see people talking about this a lot online, and a lot of people don't like to talk about this, or they feel like they can't raise their prices because they need to undercharge in order to be able to survive. So like I'm always kind of like, what I like to do, I'm just going to say what I make or like the number, the average prices that I charge. And if people want to follow my example, they can, or they don't, that's up to them. I think for younger artists, especially, it's really, really hard because especially when you're just out of school and you rarely have any professional experience. I totally get why people undercharge because I used to do it all the time. And in many cases, I still like, especially with smaller clients that aren't movie studios or that probably don't have as much money, like I tend to be a bit more lenient because I'm like, yeah, okay, I like your project. I want to do this for you. Like we can negotiate a price. But yeah, I think the clients that I don't hesitate on charging or like charging extra, especially for a lot of revisions, are the big ones because I know they have the funds for it.
Right.
Yeah, when I started out with freelancing, I've only been freelancing for a few years, so I don't consider myself the master of anything. But when I first started out, I was charging maybe like a few $100 for an illustration, like 300 at max.
Right.
I was really afraid to go farther than that. But what that did was, especially because I like to put a lot of like detail into my stuff and I like to spend my time on it, was that I was overworking myself. And 300 per piece, if you're only doing it once in a while, it's just not that much money at all.
Right.
And so I was just constantly being burnt out by it. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is not going to work for me. Like I'm not taking any enjoyment from charging super low for like a really full out complete illustration. I need to raise it. So I started raising my prices, and I found that it has worked for me, but it's also only worked for me because I managed to join like an agency. And so they would, and so they've been kind of pitching me to higher paying clients as well. Like and this is why I find it really hard to talk to younger artists or give advice, because I think everyone is different. It depends on what you want to achieve with your art career, if you want to go into art at all.
Right.
Because some people, they just do art as a hobby. And I'm just like, if you're just doing it for fun and you take, some fun commissions every once in a while, then I think it's, especially if you're not doing it for a living, I think it's fine to charge like whatever you want. I think for, other people, especially if you want to make this into your full-time career, like I will just say, I've burnt myself out several times, just way undercharging myself. And this is what has kind of forced me to begin charging higher and higher.
Right.
And now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get steady work and I can charge the amount that I feel comfortable charging. And it doesn't burn me out as much.
Right.
I still run into the issue where I do tend to take on more work than I think I should. So that's kind of a lesson that I'm trying to learn. And I think I have to learn it soon because freelance it's a bit of a different beast than working for a studio, because you are your own boss. So you kind of have to be in charge of everything from, when you start work to when you finish, and, what types of prices you're charging, taxes, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, speaking of burnout, I think you also had a big thread about like feeling burned out, and then you sort of like kind of, I guess, lost the connection to your art in some regards. And I guess it's also difficult, like how do you balance like the right number of projects, since you are self-employed? Like, I mean, you don't have a fixed income. There's like a salary is always varied on the projects you have currently going on. And I guess it's also difficult to say like, well, I am only capable of like speaking as a machine, I'm only capable of earning, let's just say $5,000 a month, because I am just maybe not good enough, or maybe just like, this is just my skill level right now. And I guess it feels difficult to say like, well, in theory, I could earn $10,000 if I just work twice as much, but there's sort of a cap, but you're not a machine, you're a human being. So I guess it's also difficult to sort of set your own boundaries and realize this extra project will sort of destroy, or like has a detriment to all the other projects you're currently already juggling at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. So last year, at the end of last year, what I was doing, and I do not recommend this to anyone, I think I had like 10 to 12 projects at a single time. And this was also back when I was doing New York Comic Con. I just had so many things going on at the same time. And so I was really burnt out by December of last year. Like I just, I really buckled down, and I sped through all of these, and I tried my hardest. But afterwards, I was like, my tank was just completely empty.
Right.
And so I had to take, the rest of December and January off, just because I was kind of like, I literally I stared at my iPad, or I was staring at a blank canvas, and I was like, I can't, anything I'm going to produce is going to be complete trash.
Right.
If I don't rest. And so I spent 2 months just doing nothing. But I mean, I was still doing work, but it was like really, really little, like as little as, it was just the least that I could manage.
Right.
And I spent a while doing just like pursuing hobbies, reading, playing the piano, and just like going outside for walks. I think hobbies are so important, because those just they will rejuvenate anyone's creative juices if you do them for long enough.
Right, yeah.
And Yeah, so that's what I did for a while, and I mean, it worked. Like now, I'm no longer burnt out. I'm also like only working on like 4 projects at the moment, so it's not as much as I was doing previously.
Mhm.
But I would like to get to a point where I can justify doing only 2 or 3 projects at a time, just because it's, yeah, I think with the prices especially, it's hard to justify because you're always like, well, I do want like and need more work, but also if I take on too much work, I get burnt out and I can't do any work.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, it's hard to navigate, and it's I don't know the full answer to it because I'm still figuring it out myself. But I do know, rest and hobbies, they're super important because if you don't take the time to rest your body, then your body will eventually, it'll force you to take the time
Yeah.
to, rest up.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, speaking about the work, maybe a little curveball. So like, yeah, like what is so horrible with drawing eyebrows?
What is so horrible about drawing
Right,
eyebrows?
yeah. I think you mentioned that at one point that you're just like, I think hands are mostly fine, but I think eyebrows are the one thing that killed you.
Oh, yeah, well, I also have trouble with hands,
Really?
not as much as I used to. Because I mean, I think every artist, they have trouble
Right.
with drawing stuff like hands or horses, unless you're one of those artists who loves drawing, horses and those kinds of stuff. Um, it wasn't that I had trouble with drawing eyebrows. I think it was I had trouble with drawing like faces and making them look okay, like symmetrical wise. I had trouble making things look relatively symmetrical, and it's hard with human faces, especially because I think like when you're learning art, you draw a face of like facing, like you draw a face facing you like as a front view, or you will draw it like 3/4. And then when you flip it, everything just looks
Right.
like a Picasso.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything looks, weird and out of place.
Exactly.
And I still find myself, I have that problem, like still.
Yeah.
Like it isn't that much of a problem as it was back when I was still learning and like trying to get used to drawing.
Right.
But I still have trouble, especially with like the eyes and eyebrows. I find that, one of my eyes is always like way higher than the other for some reason. And it's just something I know I have to practice.
Right.
I think I can get it down if I just buckle down and practice more. But now I have the added pressure of doing this as a full-time job.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
less time to practice, and you just got to spend most of your time working for.
Yeah. Do you sometimes take the time to practice, or is it just like do you sort of feel like this is wasted time because you could be just doing something for actual work and seeing it as a practice or something like?
Yeah, I do run into that issue as well. I've been trying to practice a lot as of late as well. I used to practice a lot in my sketchbook. Like I used to draw a lot, just, in sketchbooks, and I used to fill up a lot of them. I haven't done it in a few years, and it's only been recently that I've tried to start filling up a sketchbook again, just because I'm like, you have to keep up with practicing.
Sure.
I think it's with any craft. It's with, like, if you want to be a world-class musician, you have to practice, like singing or piano or whatever. It's just you have to practice your scales, and it's the same with art. You have to practice with like warm-ups. You have to make sure your anatomy's all right, and you're tight on the art fundamentals. It's important, and I don't think that enough people do it. But I also don't blame people who don't practice a lot, because I'm like, we're all busy most of the time. But that is something that I've been trying to do a lot.
And during your time at the Maryland Institute College of Art, what is something you learned that you still treasure today, and what is something that you wish you didn't hear from some, like maybe your teachers?
So something I learned and something I wish I didn't learn.
Right, or something you wish you didn't hear and yeah.
Okay, At Micah, something I learned. Oh man, there's like so much, and like also not enough at the same time. I had heard from someone, I do think it was at Micah, that was the place that I learned where I should, like, that I learned that I should be in posters. It was something that I think it was my second year at Micah where I had an assignment from a teacher, which was to do a mock-up of it was like a DVD cover for a movie.
It was Vertigo, right?
Oh yeah, it was Vertigo. And yeah, so the teacher assigned me Vertigo. And this was actually before I got into old movies. And I asked him like, oh, why did you think I would like this film would fit me? And he actually said he didn't know. He was like, oh, I don't know. I think it would, it would be your vibe. And so I did it, and I found out I really liked this kind of stuff, which was to do covers for things and posters for things. And so that was when I learned like, hey, I should probably be in this field. And so that was pretty much a life-changing moment, because now that's what I do.
Right.
Something I wish I didn't learn. Oh my God, I hate saying this, but like sometimes art school drills into you some really bad habits, and you have to learn to break them after you're out. And so back at Micah, there were a lot of teachers who looked down on students who, okay, I'm gonna say something really controversial. There was a lot of teachers who looked down on students who drew anime. And so they were like, yeah, anime is not, is something you should be inspired by, because, we're in the US and you should only look at American illustrators and whatnot. And there were a lot of teachers who really liked me because I was inspired by a lot of like golden age illustrations and a lot of the more quote unquote serious artists.
Right, the real ones.
Really, right, like I feel really bad for saying it now, because because now I am actually at a point where I am getting more influenced by anime and stuff from other cultures and stuff that a lot of the teachers back at Micah were kind of looking down on. And so
sort of racist, right? I guess, yeah.
There's like some, I don't want to say it's like super racist. I think there's some like xenophobic aspect to it,
right.
That I think a lot of people should, learn from. But yeah, like I've been more influenced by anime now. And at first, when I started watching more anime, I was kind of like, oh my God, am I allowed to do this? Like, because this is going against what I've been taught.
The forbidden craft.
Right, exactly. Which is so ridiculous thinking about it, because you're just like, there is no wrong way to be inspired by something or to do art. And now I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to be inspired by this because it's one of my big interests right now. And I really love, especially some of these old anime or older animes, like what Satoshi Kon did. I love all of his movies. I just recently saw Magnetic Rose, which is it's part of the Memories trilogy that he worked on, and it was mind blowing, and it was just something that I took a lot of inspiration from.
It's the one that released on YouTube for free, right?
It was on YouTube for free, and then I think they took it down.
Oh, really? They took it down? I haven't watched it. I wanted to watch it, but I think maybe I missed out.
It was so good. If you can find a place to like torrent it or whatever, it's fantastic.
Okay.
But yeah, it was something that I had to kind of unlearn, which was that it was okay to be inspired by these things.
And speaking about anime and learning lessons, so like what did watching the anime Blue Period teach you about art, and do you think it should be an essential watch for any artist?
I have not finished Blue Period, but I have watched a bunch of episodes. I really liked it. It is about this high school student who he was previously not interested in art at all. And then one day he sees a beautiful piece of art created by one of his classmates. And he basically falls in love with art, and he decides he wants to go to art school. So the whole anime is about him and his like journey with, finding his passion and, him trying to test into art school and all that. I really liked it. I don't know if it would be an essential watch, but I think especially for people who are just beginning to become artists or who are just beginning to find that sort of passion, it would be really, helpful to watch that show. Because I did, even as like a more experienced artist, I found myself kind of like crying at a bunch of points with that show, because there were so many places where it really hits you, especially like it just, I feel like with any artist, whether you're a professional or you're just a beginner, that's like a fantastic show to begin watching.
Yeah, awesome. And I think, I guess those are like the inspirational words we may use to end the show. And I had such a blast talking to you. The time flew by. I still have a bunch of questions left, but you're always welcome to come back to the show, especially, once you, release maybe something related to your video game or, some more poster stuff. I always love seeing the stuff you do. So, yes, thanks so much for coming onto the show. And I have what I usually do, this was back in the day where we didn't do video recordings. For the ending, I always asked artists that come onto the show to get a little piece of paper or open up like an empty like Photoshop or something, like something they usually draw on. And I always ask them to draw what they think I look like just based on my voice. But since I guess we're doing this now video recording, it is now difficult. But like I said, I wanted to give you a little practice, and I thought what would be better, because I always bother my friends or my girlfriend with the talks about, I wish I could just pull off one of those great Yakuza tattoos on the back. And, I love these. They look so cool, but I mean, I can't do it. It's just, let's be real, I can't do it. And
I think those tattoos look good on anybody. they anybody look cool, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and this is like why now my final question. And so I would ask you if you could please grab something you usually draw or sketch on. And what do you think, like just maybe a rough sketch, what kind of design should I get on my back for a tattoo? Like what animal would you feature for me? Like, now how I sort of tick with my personality. So I will leave it up to you if you could sort of like give me a rough sketch that doesn't take too much away from your time to sort of...
putting me on the spot. Okay, wait.
I mean, it can be very rough.
Yeah. What if you had like a Yakuza tattoo?
Right, exactly.
What? Let me see.
Right. So it can be whatever you want, and while you're sort of.
Did you say you were half Chinese, or you're Chinese? Your dad is.
Yeah, I can make it very quick. Like, so my father was born in Taiwan but grew up in Canada, so I'm a sort of like mixture between like grandpa is from Shanghai, grandma from Taiwan, but I guess Canadian with passport and German with a German mom. So very complicated. So I'm not sure if you find an animal that represents the Canadian goose, the German wolf, and the Chinese panda bear to represent me. It's very difficult. So, but it can be whatever. It can be also something typical like the dragon or something. It's up to you. I will leave that up to you. But like I said, thank you so much for coming onto the show. And
oh my gosh, thank you for inviting me. This was really fun. Honestly, okay, this is going to be the worst sketch of all time.
That's perfect.
The first that I don't know if you can see. Oh my gosh.
I think I might not be able, but you can maybe send it to me. I will upload it for sure. I think I can't see it. Oh yeah, I can see it. Oh, it is a bear.
Yeah, the first animal I thought of was a bear,
right.
Or like maybe like a cousin of the bear.
Right. Okay.
Or like something in the bear family.
Oh, okay. And would it be like a cool pose? Like, would it be like clawing or something? Would it be like? Or like what would it be like? There's always like so dramatically posing on the Yakuza tattoos. Like, do you see that there's like a sort of pose to it?
Maybe it would be like it would be a bear sitting, I would think. It would be like it wouldn't be in a fighting.
Okay.
Because I that bears are like there's kind of like two sides with them, because they look kind of like, they have the little like brown ears, right, and stuff. They kind of look really like fluffy and cute, but they can also be like super, deadly, right, to people. Yeah. It's just like the vibe. not the vibe, where it was just like the first animal. I was trying to think of the first animal that popped into my head.
Sure.
Like maybe it's your beard or something.
Could be.
That gave it away. But yeah, that was what I thought of.
That's perfect, yeah. And I will for sure upload it if you would be so kind to send it over later. And then maybe, maybe it will be...
The worst drawing of all. I mean, yeah, sure, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, and
but it is not representative of my.
For sure, I will also upload. I will for sure make sure that those are like quality pictures and posters you did next to it to just sort of. Don't let the people get the wrong impression that this is like something you charge for and not like a on the fly sketch of a potential tattoo. And since you can already see the roosters already in the background here, yeah. So this might have already been an animal taken. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for coming on. And for the ending, like where can people find you and what are you currently working on that you are allowed to share or you want to put into the spotlight right now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can just give my website and my socials.
Perfect.
Like my website is zixu.co, so it's spelled CO. Really short, but you can find like the majority of my portfolio on there, and the list of clients' names that I've worked for. And I'm sort of not really active on Twitter and Instagram right now because I've been trying to take time off of social. But you can find me on ZIQQIX, like Zikix on both. And yeah, what I'm working on right now, I am doing some background stuff for an indie game. I'm doing some private commission work. I just worked on something with 20th Century Fox for the new Death on the Nile movie, but I don't know when I'm allowed to share it. But yeah, and I'm working on a long-term comic, but news of that should come much later on throughout the year.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, be sure to follow her and check out all the lovely stuff she's going to post once everything is ready to drop. And yeah, I guess if you want to follow along for the show, we are Yumi Industry on Twitter and on Instagram and also on Facebook, and where I usually post like fun sketches of me or like my potential tattoo in the upcoming years of a giant bear sitting down ferociously. And also, some behind the scenes stuff and I guess wrong impressions or like wrong reviews or wrong ratings of movies and some other stuff I usually tend to ramble on about. So thanks everyone for tuning in and listen to you, see you, smell you in the next episode. I don't know. Take care everyone. Bye.
Thank you.